もしやコスモでは。
Cosmo needs me free.
Cosmo AP Luxury Sports.
I was going to start on some of the floor patching, but after the doors I'm completely sick of sheet metal. So I think what I'm going to do now is see about installing these power windows. This is a complete kit from AutoLoc that includes all the switches, drive gears, and mounting hardware. The way these AutoLoc universal power window actuators work is an adapter gear goes over the existing window drive handle. I'm not going to press that all the way in right now. Then another gear goes over that to fit the actuator. And then the actuator drives that gear and has a bendy section so that it can be placed such that it hides inside the door. I'm going to have to cut a little area here to allow it to bend, but after that it should be straightforward to mount it up. So this is about where I'm roughly going to cut. Actually, maybe right there, kind of right here. That's just going to be a rough marking, and I'll fit it better a little later. Just have to make room for the motor now.
There it is.
I'm gonna die. This is how everything's going to tuck in place. I'll weld a little bit of sheet metal into these holes to return the strength to the door, but at this point everything sits flush with the door and won't interfere with any plans that I have for inner door panels. Next I'll just pound the little adapter thingies on. That ain't coming off.
Fantastic, Luke.
You could have Andrew Sullivan sell it. Or, what the hell's that guy's name?
I don't know.
Anthony Sullivan. Anthony
That guy's
Sullivan.
dead?
No, it was Billy Mays that died.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank God.
What do you have against Billy Mays?
Everything?
I'm just screwing the brackets included with the kit to the actuator. Much like the Best Kind of Girlfriend, these brackets include many different size holes and are quite bendy, so that they can be used in almost any application. Once the brackets are secured to the actuator head, now all I have to do is mark the mounting holes.
Probably should have pre-drilled. The kit comes with self-tappers to secure the motor, but self-tappers suck, so I'm using these rib nuts. that's not going anywhere. I'm going to use one of the included brackets to hold the top of this motor, but for the bottom of the motor I'm going to make my own bracket that will mount in 2 places to the car chassis instead of just one. This is to keep it from rattling around inside the door. There, so that's about where it's going to hang, and then I'll make my other bracket next. Maybe I'll attach this one first. Yeah, I guess I better attach this bracket before I start working on the bottom. That way the motor stays in the same spot. Nutserts or riv nuts or whatever you want to call them are awesome because they let you quickly put a threaded hole anywhere. A lot of times I just use my little impact, but this time I'm using my ratchet just to show how easy these things are. The only problem is they're so easy is that you could get into the habit of just putting threaded holes everywhere without putting any thought into where they should go and ending up with just a monstrosity of holes. And if there's anything people hate, it's a monstrous hole. They go in just that easily. Just tighten this motor into place temporarily, and then I can figure out exactly what position to put the other bracket. I made this little template for the lower bracket out of cardboard. Now all I have to do is make it in metal. Since I have to make 2 of these brackets, I decided to first make a template and then just copy it instead of making the same measurements for both the passenger and driver side.
Maybe the next piece of shop equipment I buy will be a laser cutter, so I don't have to manually cut out all these little brackets on the bandsaw.
Since I have 2 doors, I made 2 templates, and now I'll just punch the holes so that I can drill them appropriately. And probably one here to make that easy. Now I just have to drill the hole.
I'm using the Dremel to create a small notch so that one of the little screws on the motor won't interfere with the bracket.
There we go, that's a completed bracket. The bracket mounts to the bottom of the motor, and now all I have to do is kind of nudge it into position and then mark my holes so that I can drill to insert the nutserts. Pull this motor off so that I can drill the holes. Okay, and now the moment of truth. Does the motor actually fit? Good so far. Yeah, I'm just going to have to elongate these holes a little bit because it kind of shifted the top hole down. Either way, it looks pretty solid. I drilled out the holes just a little larger, and now everything seems to fit. That's just the nature of hand fabricated parts. Everything is a little different. Even factory cars have shims on their body panels, so I'm not too worried about it. You know, it's best to leave everything just a little bit loose until all the fasteners are in, then give everything a bit of a snug down. There we go. That just barely clears the internal door mechanism, but very, very solid. It will not rattle around inside the door when the car's running. And here's the moment of truth. Power windows. Yeah, this stock hand crank is just a little bit bent, so I'm going to have to straighten it out, and then when I do, the motor won't be fighting it, and it'll run a lot smoother. Now I think I'll just fill in this little area here with sheet metal.
As I've done before, I've just created a template out of cardboard and then used that to get the shape of a patch panel, which I'm now cutting out on the bandsaw.
I made this lower piece by cutting out a cardboard template, then cutting out the metal and grinding it to match. Now all I have to do is the same thing for the upper and then weld them in place.
Next in Aaron's Arts and Crafts Hour, paper mache.
After a little bit of back and forth to the grinder, the top piece now fits, so this whole mess can be welded in place. Terrible task. Just terrible. It'll do the job. I brought the piece over to the bench and just ran some tacks on the other side. And I'm just going to magnet it in place now and then tack the top piece on. There's a lot of room for welding magnets. Top piece will just fit right there. Hopefully held in enough by the magnet.
I removed the piece from the door and brought it over to the bench for final welding.
I'm just welding this thing together on the bench. It's going to be a lot easier to do here than in the door. I'm not really that worried about distortion because it's going in a door. need to let that cool, then grind down those welds.
Yeah, I know that's a cutting wheel, but I found it to be the perfect shape to get into those little nooks and crannies where the weld kind of intruded upon.
Well, she seems to fit all right, but before I burn it in, I'm going to have to hit the inside of the door with some weld primer, as well as hit the back part of this with some weld primer as well, so that it doesn't rust up in the future. Just cleaning up the area so the weld primer will adhere properly. I gave the piece a quick blasting before I painted it, just so the paint adheres properly. It's going to take about an hour for that weld primer to dry before I can do any welding. So I'm going to start working on the driver's door, which should go a hell of a lot quicker because I kind of have the procedure already down from the passenger door. So I'm going to start by marking the areas that I need to grind away, just as I did on the other door. I just copied the measurements from the passenger door to make things a bit easier.
Now I'm back at the passenger door for the final coat of weld-through primer. By the way, I'm using Norton brand zinc-rich weld-through primer. Now, just like the passenger door, I have to install the drive gears onto the driver's door.
Seems to move smoothly. Well, now that the passenger side is all set up, all I have to do is reverse it for the driver's side. I can install these brackets at exactly the same location, just backwards. They can also be cut at exactly the same spot because one side is just a mirror of the other.
This probably wasn't the safest thing I did all day. You know, cutting a bracket that I'm holding in my hand with a Dremel. The brackets now get secured to the actuator motor using the small self-tapping screws included with the kit.
Everything goes together far quicker the second time. I suspect I'll still have to elongate these holes though.
Everything on the driver's door is simply a reverse of what was done on the passenger door. It's just going a lot quicker this time because I know exactly what steps are involved.
as I thought I would have to do, I just have to punch these holes out a little bit so that my both holes line up. Yep, there we go. All it took was a little extra clearance, and now these bolts will thread in. All of the hardware that I'm using is stainless steel. I tend to only use stainless steel hardware because life is far too short to deal with rusty, seized hardware. Done. Nice and strong, no rattles. And now for a test. Nice and smooth. Obviously the driver's side is not bent like the passenger side. Now I just have to remove all this stuff again, fill in this area, do my painting, trim my brackets, and then the doors are done.
I purchased a used blasting cabinet and then modified it to use my pressure blaster instead of the wussy siphon blaster that it came with. So now it is far more convenient to sandblast all the little brackets and stuff that I make before paint, instead of having to drag the blaster out, tent out an area of the shop, and then deal with the mess that's caused by the procedure. Now just a quick shot of hardware store rust paint on the freshly blasted material.
I made the same piece for the driver's side as I did for the passenger side. Now I'm just cutting the tack so that I can bring it over to the bench and fully weld it. There we go.
And after the welding, there's the grinding. Always the grinding.
While the driver's side stuff is drying, I'm going to weld in the passenger side. So first, just a few tacks. Close enough. Now let's weld this bad boy into place. Oops. I don't have to worry about warping as much here because it's inside a door. No one will ever really see this, except everybody watching me doing this.
I don't think people who have never built a car before ever realize how much grinding really is involved in the process. I swear I probably spend half my life grinding.
Now I'll just shoot a few coats of black paint on the area so it doesn't rust up.
And now back to the driver's store.
Well, that worked out very poorly. Try that again. Oops. There we go.
Hey, just for anybody wondering, this is 1500 times real speed. So in real life, this is about 10 minutes worth of welding.
Now that all the grinding is done, a quick coat of rust paint so that it doesn't corrode in the future, and I can reassemble the driver's door.
All 12 bolts that I'm using to hold the actuators in place are about 1/4 inch too long, so I have to cut them all down. The easiest way that I found of doing this is to thread the bolt into a nut, clamp it in the vise, then run a grinding wheel around its circumference a few times. After that, unthread the bolt through the same nut, which will clean up the threads, and in most cases you don't need to run a die down them. Before final installation into the doors, all the mounting brackets need to be cut down. A cutting wheel makes a quick job of cutting down the thin metal.
Now finally, after all that bracket making and welding and grinding and painting, the actuators can be installed for the last time. There's also a coat of anti-seize on each one of these bolts, which is very important when threading stainless steel fasteners, because if you don't use anti-seize, there's a high chance of galling the threads, or if they're dissimilar metals, they will rapidly corrode. So I usually end up with anti-seize on every single one of my fasteners, whether stainless or not. Okay, and now we can just line everything up and tighten down the bolts. Final cinching down. Nice and tight. Like everything's going to fit. This is likely the last time this gets assembled, so there's a small snap ring that keeps the gears from walking around, which gets installed. And also a tiny set screw that goes between the gear and the adapter, I guess just to hold everything in place. I still have to straighten the passenger window crank. I think what I'll do is I'm just going to stick a rod in this hole and then bend up on it wherever it wants to go. And once again, it's exactly the same procedure for the driver's side.
I should mention that these are universal power window actuators, and if your door is a bit flatter than mine, they'll probably take a lot less effort to install. But that's one of the things about any universal part. It's that it's universally wrong for every application, and then it's your job to make it fit.
Tighten everything down. It all seems to fit. That fits even better than the passenger side. This gets a little snap ring as well. Yeah, it's in there. And another one of these really annoying to drive tiny set screws. Don't strip, don't strip, don't strip, don't strip. Please don't strip. Don't strip. Don't strip. Don't strip. Don't strip. Don't strip. Yay, it didn't strip. And one final test to see if it still operates smoothly. Excellent. I put the windows back in the doors, which is the safest place for them, and now I can demonstrate, after all that work, power windows. Hey, I know this episode was a little long. It should have been split into 2 parts, I know, but I did that on purpose because I figured that I would leave the next part for something you've all been waiting for.